Today we honor Nex Benedict, a 16-year-old non-binary citizen of the Cherokee Nation.
Nex was a kind and authentic young soul whose light was unjustly extinguished on February 8th, 2024, after being beaten by their classmates at Owasso High School in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
This episode is for you, Nex. Rest in power. Welcome to MILF.
I'm Courtney.
And I'm Jennifer.
And we are two moms into literary freedom. So this story first came to your attention, Jennifer, right?
Yes.
On TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed as though only TikTok was sort of reporting on it. But
pretty much. Like, I've searched Facebook for information on Twitter, and it's starting to make its rounds there too, but really TikTok is where it's been.
But now that if you Google Nex Benedict's name, a lot of like CNN and NBC News, excuse me, has picked it up. Rightfully so. Like, this is definitely something that we need to be talking about. It's just a horrible tragedy that for a little bit it seemed like it wasn't going to be discussed, because you know what, there really is more to this story than what, I don't know, what I've been reading.
Right. I mean, this happened February 8th, and it started making the rounds on TikTok on like the 19th.
Yeah, it does seem like a little bit of a delayed reaction. I'm happy that Nex is getting the recognition and the justice that they deserve. But when you read like the local news article about it, it was like, oh, this is an ongoing police investigation. Right now they're waiting on an autopsy to determine if it was like what did they said something like
if it was related to the fight at
like
all.
Of course it was.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, like that angers me. And I know you gotta dot all your T's and cross all your T's and dot all your I's,
right,
whatever that saying is. But like, Nex was jumped by 3 students.
Yeah.
And there are eyewitnesses saying that these 3 students were kicking Nex repeatedly in the head.
Yes.
And then Nex died the next day.
Right.
So, we need to treat it with the proper, I don't know, we need to look at it through the proper lens, which is this person, this young student deserves justice.
And there's reports saying that they couldn't walk after this. Like, they couldn't walk to the nurse's office. So I don't understand, if someone's having difficulty walking,
right,
why they wouldn't call.
Anytime there's a head injury, like if you get this happened, not to me, but to someone that I'm very close with, when they received a head injury at work, their work jumped on it immediately. It was like, you have to go to the hospital. Right. You have to get checked out. And of course they're covering their ass.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, that's what you do when you get a head injury. So, and the fact that they were released from the hospital, right? Did you read about that?
Yeah.
That's
because they were released that same day, and then the following day, they came back into the hospital,
and then that's when they died.
Yeah.
But before we get into it, I think it's important that we do acknowledge that we live in a time where the incomplete facts of stories are used to drive clickbait.
Yes.
And we don't want to do that. We want to be cautious when we're sharing this story and honoring Nex's memory and, searching for justice. And we want to do that while also respecting the grief that people are feeling right now. Now that Nex is gone. And it's just so sad, because Nex was a straight A 16-year-old student.
Right. Loved rock music, straight A student, like you said, very kind.
Their friends described them as an extraordinarily kind and loyal friend, right?
Yeah.
And they lived with their grandmother, but the mother is not out of the picture. I think I was seeing different reports, so we're not totally sure about that. We're not going to act like we know, but I've seen things where the mother said this and then the grandmother said this.
Right. So, not sure if they're just confusing who the grandmother is
Right.
and saying that's the mother, or if the mother's also in the picture.
Yeah.
But it seems like the grandmother is the guardian.
Okay. And Nex was a citizen of the Cherokee Nation. Didn't you say you had something that you had been reading about how they were?
So, again, I saw on TikTok a indigenous person do a video on Nex, and they mentioned that Nex was a two-spirited person.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, okay, that's interesting. So I looked it up, and on the indigenousfoundation.org, they talk about this, the history of two-spirit folks. And it says the concept of two-spirit folks existed well before the arrival of European settlers on Turtle Island. Indigenous individuals who identified as two-spirit folks were seen as gifted and honored in their community.
I love that.
Because they carried two spirits with them, both male and female. 2S folks were often the healers, medicine people, and visionaries within their given community, and they were foundational members of their culture, which I think you touched on that in the last episode.
Yeah. Oh, I always, anytime I can bring up shaman, I will, because so my favorite genre of reading is anthropological fiction, or like historical fiction, and in various cultures around the world. So I read a lot about like the hunter gatherers and like the pre European times, and they too have two spirit folks, but they're not called that. They're just I don't know how they call them. They call them like genderless or something, and it's this idea of like a medicine person who's very wise, but they don't have a gender. And so we see this in various cultures around the world. Pre colonization of these lands. And for those I don't want to assume that everyone knows this, but Turtle Island is the indigenous description of North America, right? Right. Okay, just wanted to clarify that more for myself.
And I'm agreeing with you, not really knowing it, but it is. Like, that's where...
It's the origin myth, which is such a beautiful story. It's just called Turtle Island, if you want to look it up.
Yeah. So here we see that, this is not new, being gender fluid or genderless. It's not a new concept. And like you said, they were they identified as a non-binary person. Right. And they, according to the text messages that you found, they were being bullied. Now, it doesn't explicitly say that Nex was being bullied because of their identity, but we are, in this episode, we're going to get into some weird connections that Nex's school has with a self-proclaimed terrorist, Chaya Raichik of the Libs of TikTok. Yeah. So, this episode is to honor Nex Benedict, but in a way of telling, kind of revealing the connections. Right. And just sort of bringing attention to the harm that people like Chaya Raichik and State Superintendent Ryan Walters?
Wait, is his name Ryan? Yeah, Ryan Walters. People like him for putting Chaya Raichik up on this like silver platter of a pedestal, okay?
And also speaking about trans people, gay people, non-binary people as being like an enemy and bad.
Yes, and as being groomers. Yes. Which is not true at all. But yeah, I guess that's kind of what we're just prefacing this episode with is we're doing this in honor of Nex Benedict, but we are going to discuss in great detail the Libs of TikTok.
Yeah, because the connection is there. I know that they're trying really hard to now distance themselves from this and say, that they're not responsible in any way. And sure, you're not directly responsible for every punch that Nex received.
Okay, thank you for bringing that up, because that is kind of the definition of this stochastic terrorism, which is what Chaya Raichik put in her bio on Twitter or X, which is funny because isn't Libs of TikTok not even on TikTok?
I'm not even sure because I've heard of them before,
Yeah.
but I didn't know if they were actually on TikTok or.
I read somewhere that they're just on X.
Okay.
Which I thought.
Well, maybe they got kicked off of TikTok.
Oh, that would be surprising. I feel like TikTok doesn't kick anyone off. Do they?
They do sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, TikTok. So yeah, Chaya Raichik. Let's just introduce Chaya. I like to introduce her as a professional bigot, a far-right anti-LGBTQ extremist, a participant in the January 6th riots, and founder of the hateful social media account Libs of TikTok, which isn't even on TikTok.
Right. And this person's responsible for several bomb threats.
Because what she does is she reposts LGBTQ content in a derogatory, hostile, and harassing manner. And yet the bomb threats resulted in her spreading lies about something at the hospital, right?
Children's hospital as well as schools.
Okay.
One in Oklahoma.
Oh, really?
There was a TikTok that went viral of a Oklahoma librarian, school librarian. And, obviously they're being constantly called groomers and indoctrinating their children by the far right. And so she made a funny video like saying, yes, here's my woke agenda.
Oh, I remember that video.
And her woke agenda, the joke was that she's teaching them to be kind and loving kids.
And they were like really cute, innocent picture books about like the golden rule. Treat others how you want to be treated. Yeah.
Because she said it was the woke agenda. Not only did Libs of TikTok repost that, so did the superintendent of Oklahoma, the state superintendent, which is Ryan Walters. And after he reposted that, that school and other schools, I think in Oklahoma, started getting death threats and bomb threats.
Okay,
and had to be actually evacuated a couple of times.
That is terrorism. And this isn't just me being dramatic and saying that's terrorism. Like, this isn't my opinion. I agree with this assessment. But according to the Max Planck Institute for the Study of Crime, Security, and Law, stochastic terrorism involves the use of mass media, such as X, to provoke random acts of that's going to be a hard word to say, ideologically motivated violence that are statistically predictable, but individually unpredictable. Okay, so that's like a lot to sort of absorb, but basically it's using social media to amp up all of these hateful bigots in a way that you don't know how they're going to react. You know it's going to be bad. You're doing it with nefarious intentions, but you don't know if it's going to be like, death threats that don't actually happen or a bomb threat that actually does happen. Right. And, so it's statistically like you can predict like, oh, if you can predict that like all these hateful people are going to cause harm, but it's unpredictable and that you don't really know how it's going to cause harm.
And I think she has to know because, come on, January 6th happened, right? And we saw kind of, I don't know if it's the same thing applies to what happened in January 6th.
I think it does.
But we saw how quickly that group got riled up to do harmful things.
And people did die.
Yeah. Or
were injured.
We know that these people are very pro Second Amendment, so they're heavily armed. Yep. They have access to weapons. We've seen them do over and over things that attack minority groups. Yeah. And,
historically marginalized. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not
it's unsurprisingly connected to Nex's death.
Yeah.
And what didn't you say that she's like backpedaling immediately now? She's like, oh, I'm being blamed for this death because I identified as a terrorist or something.
Right. So she posted on the 19th, the media blamed a murder on me and now I'm getting death threats.
Oh, so now she's trying to turn around and be like, boo-hoo, like I'm getting the death threat, which I don't condone. Right. You can't fight fire with fire. Some people will disagree and say, yes, you can fight fire with fire. But in my opinion, like, two wrongs don't make it right. Right.
Like, I despise this lady. And, I mean, I'm not wishing death on her. I wouldn't be upset if she passed away. Okay?
I get you. Yeah.
But I'm not wishing anyone to go harm her.
Exactly.
Like, if she naturally dies.
Okay. Let's move on.
Thoughts and prayers, right?
Yes, thoughts and prayers. I get what you mean, though, for sure.
But I don't think it's okay to send her death threats or,
Yeah.
But I guess in the same way, like, what am I saying right now, right? I'm saying, like, I'm not saying a death threat. I don't consider that a death threat.
No, that's not a death threat.
But I'm saying, like, if
you don't like
died,
her. Yeah. She doesn't bring any good to society. I don't know how she sleeps at night knowing that she is responsible for bomb threats at Boston Children's Hospital and the Children's National Hospital back in August of 2022 when she falsely claimed that minors were receiving gender-affirming hysterectomies.
Right.
I
remember that.
And that is why people, like, forgive me, but, like, boomers will come up to me, like, when I was running for school board, and they'd be like, but they're cutting off their genitalia, and they're saying it's, gender affirming care for 13-year-olds, and they're performing genital mutilation. And I'm like, no, sir, they're not doing that. And I'm like, what makes you think? Well, I saw it on Fox News, and it's Chaya Raichik.
Right.
And people like Chaya Raichik. Yeah. I don't want to give her all the credit, but
no, because there's a bunch of them.
Yeah. But, like, she's the reason that, like, I'm telling you, every time I did a public event for a school board, I had people asking me about this stuff. And you know what the other thing they asked me about was? The fucking litter boxes.
Which, again, she also republished that story. That hoax.
Yeah.
And so did this state...
Walters.
Yes.
Ryan Walters.
The state superintendent.
He was elected by the people.
He barely won.
Oh, God. And his term, I looked it up, his term ends in 2026. So can't get rid of him. Can't vote for him again, though, so that's great. Right. But, all we can do at this point, and this isn't me being pessimistic, it's just reality. All we can do is make noise, which is what we're doing, and vote. And the people of Oklahoma need to vote for a state superintendent that is going to denounce people like Chaya Raichik and libs of TikTok and not embrace and support and glorify them. Right.
And if you think that their rhetoric doesn't, affect the schools and the students, we're seeing it here with what happened with Nex.
Yeah. So why don't you go in and jump into tell our listeners, how is Chaya Raichik connected to Owasso High School, which is where Nex attended?
So let's start with the state superintendent.
Ryan Walters.
He's been closely linked to Moms for Liberty, was at their summit along with Manny Diaz Jr., which is the Florida Board of Education. What do you call him?
Commissioner of
Education. Thank you. Sorry, because there's Oklahoma has an Oklahoma State.
Yeah, everyone kind of has a different. Oh yeah, because it's not this. Because superintendents in Florida are for districts, so it's not the same thing. So a state superintendent is like
he oversees the other. Yeah, it's basically the
every
same
state
job,
is different,
but different titles, and that's why I'm getting all tongue tied here. But so they sat on this panel for Moms for Liberty. They continually spout things like bathrooms have litter boxes because kids are identifying as cats, which that's not true. They're using their school's platform because he puts out videos where he says really derogatory things about trans people, non-binary people.
Wasn't he, sorry, did you just say this, but wasn't he behind like the whole bathroom thing? Wasn't there?
I'm not sure if he was directly, because Oklahoma is like right up there with Florida with passing laws that are not great for trans and
anyone in the queer community, honestly. Yeah.
So I'm not sure if it was the state that passed the law or if he had a hand in it. But they did pass a law last year where you have to use the bathroom assigned to your sex on your birth certificate. So next, whether that was a bathroom they wanted to use or not, had to use the women's bathroom.
Okay.
And shortly after that law passed, the bullying amped up for her at the school. So this is what the grandmother said, that, they were being bullied, and it started to get really bad after this law passed.
And the reason for that is because you've got these parents that are homophobic and are quite frankly not very smart, and they're seeing the shit that Ryan Walters is doing and that their state is saying, and they're like, I'm gonna like lean into that and talk about it in front of my kids, and then either on purpose or on accident create, homophobic children,
right?
Which in turn go to school and now see, people like Nex who are different, and then want to treat them in the way that like they're being portrayed in the media as these like abominations,
right? And that is exactly what happens. I see that like even in elementary school with our, I don't know if your kids tell you about it, but I know my children tell me about it, where there is a lot of homophobia in our schools. And it's because these kids are getting it from their parents.
Right. And I've got, like, my own kids will come home and be like, I can't be friends with so-and-so anymore because they said that it's wrong to be gay. And I was like, well, what if you had a conversation with them and you shared your opinion about that, and maybe, your friend got a different perspective and maybe forms their own opinion.
Right.
And so they, a few times they actually did that. And, I think we're lucky in that case that, it didn't go a different way. But I could see friendships like breaking up because of it. Yeah. Because, kids and it's the same with our kids. They adopt our own opinions.
Right.
And I'm not saying that that's right or wrong, but like as a parent, I do try to say, hey, form your own opinions.
Right.
Here are my opinions, and here are why these are my opinions. But I do want you to form your own opinions. But that's really hard to do. But another thing Walters proposed was, which was approved by the State Board of Education, that required teachers to tell parents if a child's used pronouns that didn't correspond with their gender.
He tried to make that like a rule, but the state was like, no, you don't have the authority to do that.
And that's why I wanted to bring this up, because it was a Republican attorney general in Oklahoma, which I want to bring this up. Because, it's oftentimes it might sound like we're saying all Republicans are bad.
Right.
All Democrats are good, which is not what we're saying at all. We're not, I don't identify as a Democrat. I don't identify as a Republican hater. I identify as someone who is seeking justice for historically marginalized groups.
Right.
Oftentimes that tends to lean left, but we're not going to get into that. But anyway, so the Republican Attorney General said, no, you can't do that. Because you do not have the authority to do that without legislative approval, which is a minor victory, but honestly, they're just going to get legislative approval.
Right.
So, sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a rant
but
there.
Yeah, Nex's unfortunate story is a clear picture of what happens when we allow these laws to continue to pass, when we ban books that show representation of the queer community, when we keep painting anything queer as negative, bad, immoral. This is what's going to happen.
Yeah. And so talk about what Walters did. That was just like, so basically the state attorney general was like, no, Walters, you can't do that. You don't have the authority. So then what does he do? He appoints Chaya Rychik to some committee.
The book review committee.
Yeah. Chaya doesn't even live in Oklahoma.
Has no children.
She lives, and she's not even a librarian or like adjacent to any of that. She lives in fucking California. And here she is sitting on the advisory board, the state advisory board for books. For
a state she doesn't live in. For a community where she doesn't really belong to. She doesn't have children there. Exactly. She's not a parent. I don't think she has any children. If she does, they don't go to that school.
No, so they don't go to school in Owasso, Oklahoma.
Right. And she's got no formal
education
a realtor in anything that's education, right? So a realtor. Yeah. What business does she have other than she loves to say that all these books are pornography, and that which is something Ryan Walters also likes to repeat. Right. He's getting rid of pornography in schools. These books are not pornographic. And he keeps also trying to bring back that the schools should be teaching Bible-based studies. No. So, like, he's actually pushed that.
Yeah, so not surprising, I guess. But, when you connect it back to what happened, unfortunately, with Nex Benedict, it makes you wonder, and it makes you want to start asking these questions. Like, would this have happened if Chaya Rychik was never appointed to that advisory committee?
Yeah, if Ryan Walters wasn't the superintendent of the state.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of want to talk a little bit more about the libs of TikTok. So in addition to targeting like hospitals and anyone who speaks out in support of the queer community, they have been targeting teachers.
Yes.
And so they're actually noted as like their most frequent targets, teachers are. And several of the teachers targeted by libs of TikTok or Chaya have reported harassment and death threats. And according to Euronews, some of the people have received hundreds or even thousands of hate comments, all for supporting the LGBTQ community on video. Making it so that teachers are afraid to do the right thing. They're afraid to speak up in support of a historically marginalized group, and I don't blame them. So much so that in April 2022, she reposted a video of an English teacher at Nex's high school. So this was
okay. So I know that there was a teacher.
It was
in Oklahoma, but I didn't realize it was their high school.
So you got to think about it like this: you've got all these students at Owasso High School, and this was April 2022. This wasn't too long ago. They were there. They remember, or they heard about how the English teacher resigned over harassment, right? Because of this video that they were recorded in which the teacher stated, if your parents don't accept you for who you are, fuck them. I'm your parent now. I'm proud of you. Drink some water. I love you. And I just love that.
Yeah.
And you got to remember it's high school. So yeah, he used the F word. Oh, boohoo, it's okay. Like,
and
it's
on
fucking high school.
Like, on his personal account, right?
I don't know the details. I don't.
Okay.
From what I read, it sounds like he was saying this in class.
Oh, okay.
Which I can see. Parents can be mad. Like, he used the F word. Whatever. Come on. The bottom line here is that he's saying, I'm here to support you and who you are, and if your parents are not supporting you, guess what? I will support you.
Right.
And of course, unsupportive, homophobic parents are not going to like that.
No, they're like, no, you have to hate my child. If I hate my child, you have to hate him too.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, I hate that. So after parents complained about the video, the teacher resigned, later telling the Washington Post that he received death threats from the libs of TikTok followers. And then libs of TikTok even spread a rumor that he was fired, but he wasn't fired. He resigned. There were actually lots of teachers that stuck up for the teacher and defended the teacher, saying that he was just providing a safe haven for students.
Which these schools, these superintendents, libs of TikTok, other groups like that, we see it in
Moms
our
for
own
Liberty.
Moms for Liberty. They want to take away that safe haven.
Yeah.
They don't want these kids to exist in these spaces.
They want them, basically what they want to do is they want these students that are just, different from what they see as the perfect child to live in fear.
Yes.
And to pass as straight and quote normal.
Right.
But we're not gonna let them do that.
Yeah, and they've gotten already too far. So I think it's time that we really start to push back a little bit harder than we have been, so we don't have another story to report on similar to Nex. Nex should still be here.
Yes. Yeah. And thank God for all the LGBTQ plus advocacy groups that are bringing so much attention to this, and we're going to link a few articles in our show notes. I mean, there's so many articles; it's hard to link everything. But they're fighting the good fight and calling Rychik out and libs of TikTok out by saying, that the endless targeting from Chaya Rychik only seems to encourage the violence against LGBTQ plus youth. So that's when you bring it back to terrorism. Yeah, you really could. There is an argument here for terrorism actually taking place and resulting in wrongful and unspeakable deaths, such as the case of Nex Benedict. So, did I explain the litter box thing? Or did we just talk about the litter box?
I think we talked about it, but we didn't go into detail.
Because I saw a little note, and I'm like, for people that hadn't heard of the litter box thing, because my husband hadn't heard about it. He's like, really? What are you talking about with litter? I'm like, what do you mean? Every person over the age of 50 has confronted me about the litter boxes. And do you think it's okay for kids to piss in litter boxes at school? I'm like, what are you talking about? So I guess maybe we should describe that. But basically, there's a rumor that like kids want to identify as cats.
Right. Because it is a trend for kids right now to wear kitty ears.
Mm-hmm. And cattails. Yeah. And I think that relates to like anime and manga.
It's very anime and manga, exactly.
Yeah, which is fine. It's just kids expressing themselves. Like they're not actually pissing in litter boxes. Like that is a rumor, and I just can't believe that people, even some of my own family members, have fallen for that rumor.
And it started off as a rumor at one particular school, which I don't know which school. Supposedly,
but it was a hoax.
It's a hoax,
yeah.
Right? That the principal allowed for a litter box in the bathroom.
It was a liberal principal, too.
For this cat-identifying child to use.
Yeah.
And then it kind of spread like it's in every bathroom. I heard in this school, and I heard that this school has litter box.
Because of Rhea Chick.
And people like her.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They spread this rumor around. And look, I get it. I get how those rumors get started, because I saw a rumor recently that said that there's a televangelist that believes that Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are
going to have the devil's baby,
the Antichrist.
I thought that was Rosemary, not Taylor.
And so that's the plan, right? And so I looked into it, like, what televangelist is saying this? I wanted to know.
It was
I can't find it.
Okay.
So it looks like it's just one of those hoax.
Yeah.
But when I first saw it,
it piqued
it's
your interest.
It's believable because I know people really hate Taylor Swift right now, and they think that she's just like the devil worshiper. She's this, she's that. And that's real. People do really believe that.
She's
not a devil worshiper, but people believe that she
worships
is.
the spaghetti monster.
Right.
Which is a real thing, but we'll
that
talk
is a
about
real religion.
That later.
So yeah, I could see how something like that can spiral. You see it posted, you repeat it. But people start repeating it like, I know my friend is a teacher at a school and he saw the litter box. And I'm like, that's a fucking lie.
Yeah.
There, you're just flat out lying.
Right, I agree.
And then if there was a litter box in a school, are you telling me with thousands of kids with phones in their pockets?
Exactly.
No one took a damn picture?
Right.
Who's cleaning out this litter box?
Let's use our heads, people. Like, come on.
Because if I'm a janitor at a school, I would be like, this is
I would sell it to TMZ.
I'm not.
I'd be like, take a picture, sell it to TMZ, retire.
Yeah. You tell me who? It's not happening, folks.
TMZ is still a news source, right?
They're still around. Okay. I think they've lost a lot of popularity.
Did I date myself?
No. They're still
really
around.
Okay.
They're still around, but I think it's people have caught wind that they're just a little extreme sometimes with their reporting.
they would post articles about litter boxes in schools.
Yeah,
probably. One thing I do want to bring up. I think we touched on almost everything, but social media has pros and cons, has strengths and weaknesses. But I'm seeing a lot of strengths lately in that there are a lot of really smart and good people that are reporting on things that are just hard for people to either understand because it goes over our heads, or we just don't have the time because we're two moms like running households and trying to, keep the roofs over our kids' heads and food on the table. So it's like we don't have time to like look into this stuff, right? But if you follow the right people on social media, they break it down for you in ways that are really, really easy to understand. Like, one is Sharon Says So. I'll put it in our show notes, but at Sharon Says So. She breaks it down in such a beautiful and very unbiased way. Okay. And she even covered the Nex story in a very unbiased way.
Okay.
And she even, at first I was like, oh no, she's dead naming Nex, which is something
a lot of reports did initially. Yeah.
And so Sharon Says So, like she reported on Nex. She reported Nex's previous name, but then later on she didn't dead name Nex. But anyway, the point is, like, it was a very unbiased account. It was like, here are the straight facts. But the social media is really good in that regard. Like, if you're following like lots of different people, right?
Right.
And one of them is named Robert Reich, I think.
And this is on what platform?
Instagram. I am only on Instagram, which I think eventually I will make the switch, but I haven't brought myself to do that yet. But I will post, I'll post it on our show notes. Oh, yeah, it's R.B. Reich, R-E-I-C-H. But he posts all kinds of stuff about, like, Trump. So if you're interested in learning more about, like, do you know how Trump has, like, 6 different trials?
Right.
They're completely different, unrelated.
And it's confusing.
Right. And so he posts about that. But something that stood out to me that he posted was something that Abraham Lincoln wrote about called The Danger of the Mob Rule, which I had heard of before, but I forgot. Like, I probably heard about it in high school American history and then forgot about it. But essentially what Abraham Lincoln said about the danger of mob rule is that eventually some ambitious man or woman will rise up ignoring the law. In this case, the freedom to be who you want to be, such as a non-binary person, to attain power. Lincoln stated, when such a man does, it will require the people to be united with each other. And then he literally said this part, and generally intelligent, which I'm like, yep, to successfully frustrate this man or woman's designs. Okay, so Abraham Lincoln wrote that in a letter. I'm sure there's more to it, but this guy, Robert Reich, did such a good job at explaining this, and he was sort of applying it to Trump, right? But I'm applying it to not only Trump, but to Manny Diaz Jr., to Walters, the state superintendent of Oklahoma, to Moms for Liberty, and to Ron DeSantis, who are successfully outsmarting people, such as the girls who beat Nex's head repeatedly in the bathroom, and their parents, right? Those are the people that have started to believe that it's wrong to be a member or a supporter of the queer community. And so, you know, like, when you look at it in that lens of, like, the danger of mob rule, like, all we can do is figure out a way to band together, to join together, to have conversations with our families, our friends, our neighbors, and to not be afraid to speak out and say, this is wrong. You are wrong. We need to vote these people out. Because if Ron DeSantis wasn't the governor, then Manny Diaz Jr. wouldn't be the education commissioner. Right. And, you know, Oklahoma maybe wouldn't have voted for Walters. And so, honestly, it just goes back to what I was saying earlier, is all we can do at this point is make noise and vote. And I think a lot of the people that were, like, in the middle and voted for certain people just because they had an R next to their name. Yeah. And not really paid attention to who those people were are now realizing they shouldn't have done that this is bad, which is why you're seeing a lot of shift in how some votes are going. And and I was one of those people. I didn't pay attention to what was going on. Like, I've walked into a voting booth and only voted for, like, the names you knew, left the other ones blank. Or looked at, and I'll admit this, is as stupid as it is, I did this, look at the names and go, that name sounds like a better person. I did that too. I would do it for the women. I'd be like, I would vote for women. But that's not good. No. There's some women that really fuck some shit up. Yes. Like can you imagine Shia Raichik being in a fucking political office? She's already doing damage right now just as an influencer. Right. Oh, I can't even imagine that. So yeah, I mean, we learned, you know, as parents, as moms, and we started to kind of, like, realize things are just getting worse, though. Right. You know, we have to mention and I think we mentioned it before, but now it's illegal for a trans person to change their identity on their driver license or their government-issued ID. In addition to the already harmful laws that encourage the hateful and homophobic, you know, rhetoric here we've seen in the removal of books featuring queer characters, or preventing LGBTQ plus teachers from actually expressing their true identities. Like, you cannot be a gay kindergarten teacher. No. You have to be straight. You know? Or you have to, you know, you can't use your preferred pronoun as a teacher. Like, okay, I'm not saying that I understand, but, like, fine, parental rights and all that. If the student, you know, the parent doesn't want their student to go by that. I say I understand no, I get it, but I think it's stupid. I think they're stupid for doing that. But to tell an adult that they can't use their preferred pronouns, and that's what we're seeing. That doesn't make sense to me at all. Like, if your parental rights, what does it have to do with what the adult wants to call themselves? And recently we saw in the news that Ron DeSantis was, like, backing down from the book bans. That's bullshit, because he's just saying, like, Diary of Anne Frank shouldn't be banned, but everything else should be banned that features a gay character.
It's almost like this is what I think is okay, and so everyone else has to think that's okay.
Right.
And that's not parental rights.
Right.
Parental rights is this is what I think is okay for my child to read, but you decide what you want for your child.
Yeah, and no one's forcing your child to read All Boys Aren't Blue. It's just an option for parents that understand that it's important to read books with different perspectives and characters. But what Ron DeSantis and company are doing with all these laws is successfully promoting division and discrimination, and going back to Abraham Lincoln's statement on the danger of mob rule. Like, we have to reject these ideas, and other than voting, like, we have to have these conversations, like, with our racist and homophobic older family members.
Yeah.
And like, if you're talking to your grandma and you're like, Grandma, it's not like the way that you grew up anymore. Like, it's okay to be gay. Like, maybe your grandma will be like, okay, like, I love you, you're my grandchild, I'm going to respect your opinion and actually, like, challenge myself to expand my own horizons and opinions,
It's not easy conversations.
No.
And I think this is something I struggle with, that I come in, like, hot and strong and aggressive.
Me too.
And so I recognize it's not the best approach. So, like, sometimes we have to, like, simmer down a little and try to
take deep breaths.
Yeah, and talk to them in a way that, baby them a little.
And let them listen, which, as hard as it is, like, when someone says
Bite
something...
your tongue when they say something really...
Bite the tongue, yeah.
But and then you have to also understand some of these people are not going to change.
That's true.
And, that's just unfortunate, and we just have to wait for them to...
Okay.
not be able to vote anymore. Okay, sorry.
No, I agree with you 100%. That's awesome.
But yeah, we maybe need to try a softer approach. For me, like, I realize that, like, and come with facts.
But it's so hard, yeah.
I think showing them facts. And, and I think most people, right, from what I can see, the response to what happened to Nex, nobody thinks that this was deserved, that this is a good outcome. So hopefully...
something good will come of this?
Yeah, which I really hate saying it that, because I don't...
It's like saying my thoughts and prayers.
Right.
No, we want change and action.
Yeah.
But I agree with what you're saying. I get what you're saying for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so that it wasn't in vain.
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
kind of like the thing. So their life can also have, like, a positive impact.
Absolutely.
Beyond, Yeah, I know it's hard to say it, but I don't want this to happen again.
Yeah. And that kind of brings me to the end of the episode here, and I want to, if it's okay with you, I found a beautiful resource I'm going to put in the show notes, but it's a comic book. It's a series of, like, I think there's like 25 or 30 different stories.
Okay.
That are all written by members of the queer community, and they all kind of touch on different topics, and they're all very short. So I'm going to read one that was written by Mel Valentine Vargas, a queer Cuban-American graphic novelist located in Chicago. They hope to draw the kind of illustrations that their younger self, and so this made me think of Nex, and others like them could have seen to feel less alone. Mel loves singing in Spanish, playing farming video games, and eating gyoza with friends. What's gyoza? Don't know?
No.
We'll have to look that up. It sounds good, though. I'm just hungry, so anything sounds good to me right now. But, so what Mel wrote is called Guilty. The summer after I graduated high school in 2015, I came across the term non-binary for the first time. I was curious, so curious. Something about it rang true to my soul, yet I felt so torn. Was this really me, or was I romanticizing being queer? I tried so many things to fit into what the internet tried to sell as the non-binary look, such as haircuts to look more non-binary, or how to be a they/them. So I cut my hair. I changed how I dressed and how I acted. Nothing felt right. I felt guilty. Guilty that I might be labeling myself incorrectly and diminishing the credibility of genderqueer people everywhere. Guilty that I might be tricking people. Guilty that I might be lying to myself, someone who I've always been so in tune with. Yet, I loved how they, them pronouns made me feel. I loved knowing that I didn't have to fall within the binary of man or woman. And through all of this, I loved knowing that I was just Mel. I grew out my hair how I wanted. I picked out outfits that I felt good in. I became myself again. I realized that there is no one-size-fits-all recipe to being non-binary. I was as non-binary as ever, queer-coded in the best way I knew how, by being myself. And that's it. It's super short.
And what was the name of that?
It was called Guilty by Mel Valentine Vargas.
Okay.
And it's just one of many short, beautifully illustrated and written comics about being a member of the queer community. That one happened to be about being non-binary. There's a few others in there about being non-binary. It was really hard to choose, but this one I think, honors Nex Benedict in a way that they just wanted to be themselves.
And I did find a few other ones too, because I was also looking for books that dealt with non-binary and gender. Mm-hmm. So there's a few. There's Fine. I think this one you found. Fine, a comic about gender by Rhea Ewing. Mm-hmm. The Outside, trans and non-binary comics by various writers. Mm-hmm. How to They Them, a visual guide to non-binary pronouns.
Oh yeah.
And
that
The
sounds
World
good.
of Gender Fluidity by Stuart, Getty, and Brooke Thyng. Mm-hmm. Both Can Be True by Jules Machias or Machias. Mm-hmm. Beyond the Gender Binary by Alok Vaid-Menon. A Quick and Easy Guide to They Them Pronouns by Archie, Bongiovanni, and Tristan, Jimerson.
And we'll put all of those in our show notes along with the resources that we used in discussing the unspeakable tragedy that occurred at Owasso High School on February 8th of 2024.
There's also been a few reports of gatherings that are going to happen, like candlelight
vigils.
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll post those in the show notes too, because I don't have the exact information right now.
Yeah. Yep, that would be great.
On that note, don't ban books.
Ban professional bigots like Chaya Reichik.
This episode has been engineered and mixed by your hosts, Jennifer Mendoza and Courtney Green.
Thanks for listening, and be sure to follow us at MILF for Books. That's MILF, the number 4, books, on TikTok, Instagram, Threads, and X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it.
And don't forget to help the show by rating us wherever you get your podcasts.